All right. Hey everyone, my name is Addie Stever Battle. Welcome to the Michigan FFA Seek to Serve podcast. I'm serving as your Region 1 State Vice President, and I'll be serving as host today. I'll welcome my teammates to introduce themselves and our guest.
Hey everybody, I'm Marcus Pennington, and I'm serving as State Sentinel this year.
My name is Sarah Albrecht, and I'm serving as the State Secretary this year.
Hey guys, I'm Stephanie Harvey, and I'm currently serving as the State Reporter this year.
All right, and with us today we have Haley Guza. She was Michigan FFA State President last year. So Haley, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit of your experience with serving the Michigan FFA last year?
Yes, for sure. So as Marcus said, I'm Haley Guza. I was the 2019-2020 Michigan FFA State President. I hail from Ubly, which is over in the thumb, like a half an hour away from the lake. And then I'm in college right now at Central Michigan University, and I'm majoring in communication and minoring in psychology. So that's what's up with me.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you were the state president last year, and that's really awesome. And being the team after you, we've had a really great time being able to get to know you through that. So we're super excited about that. Is there any memories that really have stuck with you since your year as a state officer that you could share with us?
There's been a lot of good memories. I look back on state office, like very happy that I experienced it. There's some like funny times, like staying at Aviana Jackson's house and Anna Baker's dorm, and then like becoming friends with them through that. So there's that. There's all the different experiences, members, and doing leadership development activities. But the memory that stands out the most, it's a little different. So during National Convention, it was midweek, my younger brother went with the chapter, and then I went as a state officer, and we had to attend church during the week. So we headed to church, and we were asked to bring up the gifts while we were there, and we were still in official dress because we had to bounce from one event to the next. Like that was just a quick go to church, and then we're gonna go to the next event. And while we were there, as we walked up, we could see all different FFA jackets. There were people from Indiana, there were people from Utah, and it was really cool not only to be unified through the blue jacket, but also another facet of my life, which is my faith. And then with my younger brother there all at the same time. So that's one of the most interesting and coolest memories I have from last year.
That's an amazing memory. So a big part of our viewers are students who are going to be going to college soon or going out into the workforce. So how can you just outline for us a little bit about your major and what you're hoping to do with that for a career?
So I'm majoring in communication and then minoring in psychology. And the plan with that, there's kind of two options right now, and I'm still figuring it out a little bit. So one way that I'm thinking about going is like leadership development. So public speaking, training, workshop content development, facilitation. Those are things I enjoy, and I got to do a lot of that during state office, which opened my eyes to that. So doing something like specifically and directly with that. And the second option is using some of those skills as well, but a little differently. So maybe as a school counselor. I found that like as my siblings, Josie is a senior, my sister, she's been working on scholarships, and she'll ask me to look at them before she turns them in. And I really enjoyed that. Or my friends will be like, will you look at my resume? And I'm like, sure, I don't know why I like this, but I just like that. So those are the two different routes I'm thinking.
Good to know future resumes. We have somebody to contact for that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That's a really cool path to follow. A lot of our listeners are high schoolers right now, thinking about their future. How did you kind of elaborated on that, but was there anything else that kind of made you decide on the path that you're taking right now?
Well, initially, going back to when I had to pick college to attend, like senior year, when you're filling out applications and trying to figure out where you're going to go to school, what my strategy was just to like really super stress about it and like not decide, but just keep stressing. It was really terrible, and it like wore me down, and I still didn't have a decision, and I knew like I had a deadline, so I was going to decide by then either way, like whether I stressed about it or not. So like eventually I did come to the decision, like I was going to go to Central, and a couple of things fell into place that made that work out well. And then when I got to college, my next big decision was to pick a major. And I was like, okay, the stressing out thing did not work last time, so like let's not do that again. So what I did is I just sat down knowing that I could change my major and that a lot of students do was also like very helpful in the back of my mind. But I sat down and I thought like, what are my strengths? What do I enjoy? And then I chose the communication route. So that's classes like public speaking or interpersonal communication and how to best connect with people verbally, non-verbally, digitally, in person. And then psychology is my minor because it's just a subject that fascinates me. And I think it connects well with the communication side of things, like why are we doing what we're doing, and helps me to better understand people. So that's what some of those decisions looked like.
Yeah, totally. So it sounds like with your major and the two options that you can go on, the two paths that you have outlined are very service oriented, and that's really awesome with your passion FFA and all of your other passions that you have. So our theme this year is Seek to Serve, and we would love to hear what service means to you.
I think service is being able to put other people ahead of yourself, and not to the point where you're getting like burnt out and you're miserable and you're not able to function, but just where you're able to see like, oh, this person, they may be recognizing someone, you help plan an event, but you decide to recognize someone that maybe had a different role or had a similar role to you, and you don't say, oh, I planned this event, you're like, this person planned this event, or just going out of your way. I like to write little notes to people, like especially if I see them or they did something nice or I think they need some encouragement. So having that, I think serving people, and I'm realizing more and more, like initially, even when I was making like all those decisions I talked about, I was like, I have to have a huge impact on this world, and like people need to know who I am. And I had like this mindset that like everything had to be huge for it to be impactful. And I'm learning more and more that sometimes it's the little things that have the biggest impact. So that note or that compliment you gave someone as they walked by, or recognizing someone that helped clean up after banquet that maybe didn't have to. So that's what I'm learning about service.
I've definitely been on the receiving end of some of your notes, Haley. And I remember when you helped me prepare for state office. So I can definitely say service is you for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, speaking of those notes, that's a great way to kind of make an impact on people's lives. And a huge part of our Chapter Blitz program this year and going to different chapter visits is having students write thank you notes to people who have helped them get where they are today. So a question for you is, who is someone who's helped you become the person you are right now?
Oh man, lots of people. The major person I would say is probably my mom, and that might be a stereotypical answer, but she's just the epitome of servant leadership, and she would go out of my way, especially if I was having a super stressful week in high school or even now, she goes out of her way to help me out where I need it, and she just puts my needs and like the family's needs before her own, and she's just a very good leader and takes care of us. My grandma is also another person. We call her Busha. We think that's Polish for grandma, either that or we just made it up. But she's been very helpful. There was one time I had an FFA event and then I had a cross country banquet, and somehow things got messed up and I didn't have a ride back to the cross country banquet. And my grandma, Busha, she drove like 2 hours to come get me and bring me back for the banquet. And so she like just drops everything and she's there for you. And I've had some rough days where I'll go and I just show up on her doorstep and she's like, hey, come here. And I'm like, that's what I need. So those are two people among many that have been very influential in my life.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I know I rely on my family a lot to save me when I have issues like that. So I definitely agree with that. So kind of leading into that with the mentors thing and who's had the biggest impact on your life, what's the biggest piece of advice or the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Okay, I've heard this from a couple people, so there's not just one source, but it's helped me a lot. For many different projects and things I've done, it's a marathon and not a sprint. And that seems like probably not important, but like with me, I just want everything to be like boom, 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 boom. I want to get it done and like put everything into it all at once and like call it a day would just be the ideal thing for me. But I've learned, and even like if you take a sprinter specifically, like it's a marathon leading up to the sprint, like you have to eat healthy and you have to hydrate and you have to rest. But just trying to take things slower and be more present and just not rushing into everything and like wanting to be done with everything right away. So that's a lesson I'm still very much learning, but I would give that piece of advice to other people in their lives.
So I'm sure you heard that when you were younger, still now, when you were a first year member. What would you say to a first year FFA member if they were on the fence about joining or on the fence about jumping into that contest or going into that convention?
One of the things, if they have doubts in their minds, a new member has doubts in their minds, I like to talk about how while FFA seems like it's all just agriculture and maybe only students that lives on farms, that it's not, and like clearing that up right away and then hitting on all of the opportunities. So whether that be getting involved with the public speaking contest, or if you like have different roles, like there's different jobs at banquets, you don't have to be in all, like going through just the plethora of opportunities. If you're musically inclined, joining the state or national band, and just letting them know that there's not just a one track type of organization. We are here to help develop all sorts of skills, whether that be the public speaking or interviewing, things that will help you later in life, regardless of what you go into.
Speaking of younger members, I know for me, I knew I wanted to be a state officer the first time I saw a state officer. And that was like the biggest thing. Like, I want to be that person. So what was the moment that you knew that being a state officer was something that you wanted to achieve? And how did you go about doing that?
I would say early on, I had like an inclination as well. Like, I'm like, that's really cool. Like, I want to be one of those people. My advisor would talk about it. We had past like state officers in our chapter. And then when I sat down and like started actually filling out the application, it asks you like why you want to do this. And I was like, oh, that's a really good question. So that's where I had to really like sit down and think about it and not just be like, oh, because I've seen people do it, or just like those things I had thought before. And it's really important to me, like to be a positive role model for other people, and to be someone that other people can rely on and look up to and mentor. And I saw state office as a way to do that. And other state officers I had known had kind of played that role for me, at least a little bit, or I had seen them as that. So that was one of the reasons I thought state office could be very fitting for me and my personality.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. That actually ties perfectly into my next question. So we've got hopeful state officer candidates are turning in their applications by this Friday, and we've all had different experiences with preparing for state officer interviews. I know I've had people ask me about it. I'm sure everybody's had at least somebody ask them, and we've tried to provide as much advice as we could. So I figured this would be a good opportunity for not only the current potential state officer candidates, but then anybody else is thinking about it. What would be some advice that you would give to somebody for state officer interviews?
I think it's important to go into interviews and the whole process being yourself, because they don't want who you can be for just a couple hours or for the weekend long interview. Like, they want to know who you're going to be throughout the whole year. And that sounds like really obvious, but just like, we need all types of leaders. So we don't always need someone that's super outgoing up front. We also need people that want to be behind the scenes, or that have different strengths, that are empathetic, or whatever it might be. So go into it being yourself. And then I think another thing is confidence. So go and being yourself and be confident about it. Like, own who you are, and that's huge. And then another thing I wish I would have known as I like reflected back, or wish someone maybe would have told me, is before the interview. So whether it's the day before like the regional level interview or before the weekend long state level interview, is you can like rest up and take some time for yourself. You don't have to be trying to do questions like right up until the moment before. Like, I came into the state level interview like in a way kind of burnt out. I remember I was like starting to get sick. I was like taking cough drops so I could like talk during the interview. You don't want to do that. So just rest up a little bit before that interview, and you don't have to be going hardcore all the way to the end, as long as you've been preparing up till that point.
Totally. I know when I was preparing, I was kind of freaking out a little bit going into it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much. Like, this is going to decide everything. But that almost turned it into like a job interview. And that, as much as this is like, you're going to be responsible for this, and it's a job, you also want to make sure you're going in as yourself and not trying to be like the perfect candidate for the job. So that's something that I know I struggled with for sure.
I agree. And then just one thing I want to add quick too is that like becoming a state officer is not the end all be all. Like you don't have to be a state officer. Like I've seen some people that I was like, oh, you totally should run for state office, and they don't do that, and they've gone and like done really cool things or started to do cool things. Or other people that didn't get to be state officers and like they're in amazing, like doing amazing things elsewhere. So you don't have to be a state officer to make an impact, and I think that's really important to understand as well.
So speaking of being yourself, the four of us just recently had our winter checkpoint, where we were taken through an activity where we wrote some like life mottos, some personal mottos. I'm sure you had the opportunity to do that last year. So if it's something that you're comfortable with sharing with the world, I would love to hear what your sort of motto or idea on who you are is.
Well, the motto that I wrote was be the person that you needed. So like specifically when it comes to members, like I would have this expectation for when like a state officer would come to our school or something, and sometimes like they wouldn't even talk to me or notice me, and I was like, you would get really frustrated. So I like think back to those moments, and I'm like, what did I need as a member, or what did I want? And then I try to go engage with people and talk with them, and like not leave people out, or just those little things. But just trying to remember like maybe where people either did a really nice job or maybe they didn't do such a great job, and how I can learn from other people and what I would have appreciated at that time. I almost didn't remember that, but then I did. It took me 1 second, but I got it.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So speaking of taking time to reflect, I know we asked you the question about your favorite memory in state office, but do you have a favorite memory in your FFA career that was outside of state office?
Give me 1 second to think about that. Something that stands out was I did the discussion meet my senior year, and I had just gotten back from a vacation. I didn't know I was going to be going to the state discussion meet. It's like a little bit of a last minute thing, and I'm driving down with my advisor, and we're going through the questions as like one would, and we're just talking, and like her knowledge and the way she was just like willing to pour into me. And I know we were the only people in the vehicle, but even just like her attention and her focus, and like having life chats too during that time. That's a small moment, but it was really important, really impactful. And I think I ended up using some of those facts when I was in the discussion because she had just taken that time to share her knowledge with me.
Discussion meet is no joke. I've competed in discussion meet before.
So speaking of discussion meet, you had mentioned earlier some opportunities in FFA and how like it varies, and there are so many. What is like the biggest opportunity that you've gotten out of being an FFA member?
This is also kind of an odd one, but I did the World Food Prize. So I did it at the Michigan level first. You submit an essay that talks about how you can help with an issue related to world hunger somehow. So you pick like some facet of that in a specific country, and then you have to talk about it. You write the essay, and then I got to go to the national event, which was in Iowa. And the amount of different people, like the diversity there was amazing. And like the knowledge people had of other countries and how to fix world hunger. And I got to meet a girl that had gone to a foreign country and like actually had, I think she had done some work with wells, but just the amazing things people are doing about world hunger and the speakers I got to see. And it just blew my mind. So that was awesome to see what other people were doing, to meet people my own age, but also to see some like really big names of people that are doing a lot of things to combat hunger. So that was pretty amazing and wild.
Yeah, that definitely would have been cool to see. I didn't get a chance to do that, but I know WLC was kind of like that experience for me because I got to go the summer between my junior and senior year, and it was just really, I guess, eye-opening just to see how much of an impact we can have, and reflecting back on our history with the whole experience in DC and seeing everything. So I definitely know how you feel. WLC was that for me, and I wish I had done that World Food Prize because that sounds like something that was really cool and something that you wouldn't get anywhere else.
It's amazing the really cool things that can happen, like whether it be world hunger or leadership, the really cool things that can happen when you get all of the right minds in the right place. It's pretty cool.
Yes, for sure.
is there anything we haven't asked you yet that you're hoping to talk about while you can talk to all of the members having been a year out from state office?
I don't know if I have any other words of wisdom to impart on you.
I have a question. So one facet of FFA that we haven't really talked much about in this interview is agriculture. And I know the common saying is we're not just sows and plows. I understand. But like, what is the biggest impact that agriculture has made on you? Or what is like the biggest thing you've learned from agriculture through FFA?
I guess I'll hit on my ag experience a little bit. So I didn't grow up on a farm. I had like uncles that farm, but I did not grow up on a farm. And then when I joined FFA, I think it might have been my freshman or my sophomore year, my ag advisor was like, you should show pigs. And I live like 5 blocks from the school in town. And I was like, okay, Mrs. Kramer. And I like go to I'm like, if you can convince my parents, I'm in. I was like, this will never happen. She asked my parents and they were like, yes. So I'm like, okay. So I kept pigs in our house and then I showed. So my biggest direct ag experience is probably showing animals. But I also, through state office, whether it be business and industry tours or different events interacting with farmers, I've just learned how much like a farmer has to do. Like people, I've talked to various people and they're, oh, they just feed animals, or like they like to simplify what they do and they don't understand like how much like hard work it actually is. So I've really come to like be grateful for the work that they put into our food that I didn't always realize before, and like the variety of food that they're able to produce is pretty fascinating. So that's been huge, and my time in FFA has just given me tremendous respect for farmers, producers, growers, everything that they do.
Yeah, so speaking of that's a good tie-in, Stephanie. Speaking of the other aspects of FFA, what was your favorite contest going through FFA? Because I know we all have our favorites. I'm just curious to know what your favorite was, or if you had multiple different favorite contests.
My favorite probably was discussion meet. It was like a little bit off the wall, but I just appreciated the different topics, and they were, Farm Bureau did a nice job of picking very relevant agriculture topics. So every time I went into that contest, I felt like I learned a lot. So I just feel like I gained a lot of knowledge. And then that's the contest that I've seen the most applicable in my life, which I would not have guessed. But doing, even when I was at World Food Prize, we had to do a group project for one of like our workshops. And I ended up being the person that was kind of able to like facilitate conversation or like ask people that maybe weren't talking a lot if they wanted to say something, or just those little things I learned in discussion meet really came into play there, and I've seen that in group settings since then. So that's been my favorite contest, and the contest I see that's had the most impact for me.
So I think we've had a lot of like questions for you that have been very deep and very meaningful. So one that's a little bit more lighthearted and fun. Do you have a favorite joke? And if you do, can you tell it to us?
Okay, I do. It's my favorite because I can remember it, not necessarily because it's amazing. So I just
That's most important.
Okay. Why did the grape cross the road? Because its mother was in a jam.
Oh,
That's what I got.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. I'm gonna have to write that one down. That was good.
Oh my gosh.
I like it.
I'm glad.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm Addie.
I'm Marcus.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Haley.
And this has been the Michigan FFA Seek to Serve podcast, past state officer edition. Thank you, Haley, for talking with us. I think there have been some real gems for members to hear, and also it's been a lot of fun to sit down with you all. I really enjoy doing these. So thanks for being here, everyone.
Yes, thank you.